With that new Southern policy announced and launched in November 2017, it's already more than 2 years' time. So we have made quite significant progress, even though it was only within 2 years' time. And we have managed to make some progresses in a steady increase of people-to-people exchange, annually 10% increase of visitors between ASEAN and Korea. And also the number of ASEAN students studying in Korea has increased more than three times in the past 5 years. Bilateral trade volume surpassed $160 billion in 2018, which is the highest ever trade volume in our bilateral partnership between ASEAN and Korea. And we are also witnessing surge of foreign direct investment into ASEAN. And for peace, we've been working together with some defense industrial cooperation, and also ASEAN has been a steadfast supporter of the peace process on the Korean Peninsula. Well, there are a lot of these intensive and flurries of diplomatic events. Of course, the summits are the kind of centerpiece of all the diplomatic activities. The first one is the 2017, when President Moon Jae-in has visited Indonesia as a state guest, was well entertained and received by President Jokowi and Ibu Iriana. There's I think the state banquet at Istana Bogor, and each leader from ASEAN countries have either visited Korea, or President Moon Jae-in has made a visit to those respective capitals. So within 2 years' time, from 2017, late 2017, up until 2019, President Moon Jae-in has completed his whole tour of 10 ASEAN member states within 2 years' time, starting from Indonesia to Laos. So this is the group photo taken right after the special commemorative summit that took place in Busan, November 2019. So all the leaders with happy smiles. I think that's this commemorative summit has given us another good momentum to chart out a new roadmap and blueprints for the next 30 years, because it was the occasion to celebrate the 30th year anniversary of ASEAN-Korea partnership. So again, it is a springboard for the leaders to chart out the next 30 years to come between ASEAN and Korea. Well, finally, just let me touch upon the bilateral relations between Indonesia and Korea. Well, it's quite far away. It's almost 5,300 kilometers far, but our hearts are much closer. Hearts and minds are feeling very close to each other. And the distance between Jakarta and Seoul are more or less the similar distance between Sabang and Merauke. That is, Sabang sampai Merauke is, I think, there's more or less the similar same distance. So you have to catch a flight, and then more or less about 7 hours to reach either part of the capitals. Indonesia is much bigger in size and also in population. Indonesia is 19 times bigger than South Korea, and population-wise, 5 times larger, bigger than South Korea. So no comparison at all. Indonesia is the great country with huge potentials. the bilateral relations has been evolving quite rapidly with more substance, with more meat on the bones. So started with the consular relations in 1968. It has been elevated to the full diplomatic relations in 1973, and finally special strategic partnership in November 2017. So this special strategic partnership is one and only that Korea has with Indonesia out of 10 ASEAN member states. We have regarded Indonesia as a key partner in implementing our new southern policies, and also Indonesia has been with us for this long years of bilateral diplomatic relations as a steadfast supporter and also promoter of peace and prosperity on the Korean Peninsula. So we have decided, both leaders have decided to upgrade strategic partnership to special strategic partnership in 2017. So this 2017 state visit was quite special to both leaders, because you can see that President Jokowi was holding an umbrella while President Moon was digging the soil to plant kind of souvenir tree at Istana Bogor. The umbrella was being held by not Secret Service or security officials or protocol officers, but by President himself. And likewise, when President Jokowi was planting a tree under the rainy time, that President Moon was holding this blue-colored umbrella for President Jokowi. So afterwards, we termed this kind of very brief moment, but very symbolic, as diplomacy payung biru, kind of blue-colored umbrella diplomacy that is symbolizing the nature of our partnership, even when we are under rainy day, that we are standing by each other. That's kind of the message that the both leaders have been disseminating with this very simple photo. And then, of course, they have visited the nearby small shopping malls and to buy batiks for each other. So it's kind of symbolizing the very closeness between the two leaders. And in return, President Jokowi and Ibu Iliana made a state visit to Korea. It was the first time when the Korean government has organized official welcoming ceremony inside the old traditional palace. It's more like a drama that's was being guarded by the traditional costume worn protocol officers, and it was quite an amazing day, and it has re-emphasized the strong and solid partnership between Indonesia and Korea. So again, this last year they have met twice. One is the G20 Summit in Osaka, and then another one is Commemorative Summit in Busan 2019. So during this, the President Jokowi's visit to Korea in 2019, that was in November. President Jokowi has made a visit to Ulsan City, where the Hyundai Motors main production base is located. So through the visit, Hyundai Motors have announced its huge investment plan to set up the production plant here in Bekasi. That is now underway. The construction is underway in Bekasi. So hopefully that we could see the first product to be produced by the first half of 2022, if and when this whole construction will be moving very smoothly. Indonesia is the 12th trade partner for Korea, and Korea is the 7th trade partner for Indonesia. The number has sometimes fluctuated. Mostly it's affected by the fluctuation of commodity prices. But in 2018, we have more or less managed to accomplish about 20 billion US dollars in our two-way trade volume. The leaders have agreed to upgrade this trade volume up to 30 billion US dollars by 2022, which is quite challenging, because under this very uncertain and gloomy economic and trade circumstances abroad and home, but we are being tasked to accomplish this quite high target, which is to accomplish 30 billion US dollars by 2022. Indonesia is the 10th largest investment destination, third among ASEAN. The largest investment destination within ASEAN from the viewpoint of Korea is Vietnam. So used to be Indonesia in the early part of 2000, but it has been caught up by Vietnam. So steadily increased, but still not full sufficient. I think that's fully sufficient, because we need to explore more, and we have to tap on the untapped potentials for foreign direct investment into Indonesia. Well, there's quite familiar brands that you could recognize. There's Lotte, Samsung, LG, CGV is a multiplex theaters that's under CJ Group, and the Krakatau POSCO steel mill is the largest integrated steel mill in whole of Southeast Asia, which is a joint venture between POSCO, the largest steel mill company in Korea, and Krakatau Steel, state-owned enterprise. And the first phase of Jakarta LRT has been helped and constructed by Korean companies. And another additional milestone that we have accomplished in the year of 2019, last year, was Indonesia-Korea CEPA, Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. Even though we have ASEAN-Korea FTA, more than 13 years now, but we have felt strong needs to establish bilateral free trade agreement, which is called Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. We have managed to jumpstart the stalled negotiation in January 2019, and with quite amazing speed, we have managed to conclude the whole negotiation in October 2019. So when President Jokowi made a visit to Busan in November 2019, both leaders have witnessed the signing of the conclusion of whole negotiation in Indonesia-Korea Comprehensive Economic Partnership. We do view that Indonesia-Korea CEPA, which will be a table to Indonesia DPR, the House of Representatives, and also respectively National Assembly in Korea, and to go through ratification process. Hopefully that mudah-mudahan that we could finish up this whole ratification domestic procedures by the end of 2020, this year. So we may see the actual effectuation, implementation of IK-CEPA sometime early part of 2020. So that will be another big kind of engine for growth for both business communities in Indonesia and Korea. And also it will be giving rekindled interest on the part of Korean future investors to look at Indonesia as a potential partner. As you can see, the people-to-people exchange have fluctuated, but more or less the two-way exchanges of people are 600,000 altogether. So we hope to see more Koreans to visit Indonesia, especially after this whole global pandemic will be cleared away. So hopefully we could see much robust exchange of people between Indonesia and Korea. Well, another important pillar of our special strategic partnership lies in defense cooperation. Defense cooperation is the highest level of cooperation that ordinary countries are envisioning, because that is requiring the two governments to have very deep-rooted trust into each other. So we have signed the MOU on defense industry cooperation in 1995. Ever since then, we have conducted quite numerous consultations and meetings, and also joint researches. So in 2010, we have signed an agreement for developing and manufacturing jointly, joint development and joint manufacturing of so-called KFX, IFX, future generation jet fighters, which is still on the way. And submarine project is another important aspect of our defense industrial cooperation. We have already handed over 3 submarines to Indonesian Navy, and the 3rd submarine that was handed over to Indonesian Navy last year was actually partly produced by PT PAL in Surabaya with the help of DSME Korea. So we are expecting another phase of the production of Indonesian Navy submarines. So hopefully that when this whole technical know-how transfer and the joint collaboration will be in full length. So hopefully that Indonesian Navy will be acquiring fully and completely Indonesia-made submarines in not a distant future. Well, to handle and to overcome this COVID-19 is a common challenge. Korea has been relatively successful in stabilizing this COVID-19 spread. For the last 4 days, the number of newly confirmed cases was more or less about single digit, between 10, around 10. So it's quite a remarkable drop from the late February. The highest number of confirmed cases in late February was more than 900 cases per day. Now Indonesia is now undergoing a similar path. Every day we are now witness about 189 to 300 something newly confirmed cases. And also to our sadness, the fatality rate is much higher than the average on a global scale. So Korea has been supporting and sharing our experiences and know-how with the Indonesian government. And we have designated Indonesia as the priority country in our emergency relief and humanitarian assistance to foreign countries. So we have selected 3 countries as a priority country: Indonesia, United States, and United Arab Emirates. Actually, not Saudi Arabia, sorry. And then 2 types of assistance we have already decided to provide for Indonesia: rechargeable power battery sprayers that have been already handed over to BNPB. This is the photo that I have handed over this disinfectant sprayers, and test kits, PCR, real-time PCR test kits will be arriving in Jakarta this coming Friday. So we are expecting those test kits to be immediately delivered to BNPB for its operation. And apart from this government-to-government cooperation, some of Korean companies have already donated test kits and personal protective equipment to Indonesian government. LG, Korea Midland Power Co., Hyundai Motors, CJ, Corindo, and Lotte Mart. And some of the Korean communities living in Indonesia have been helping some vulnerable groups like ojek drivers, distributing some essential items for them. And so we feel that Indonesia and Korea are really fighting shoulder to shoulder against this COVID-19. Of course, every country has its own formula and solution in tackling this unprecedented scale of pandemic. Indonesia has its own social, cultural, economic conditions, and also its population is much larger, and territorial vastness is so huge. So Korea's case cannot be directly and completely duplicated in the case of Indonesia. But I think that's the more important element, is that we have to increase our capacity to test and trace the infection as early as possible and as much as possible, as large as possible, so that the further contagion can be prevented. And I think that has been a lesson that we have shared together with Indonesian friends. So this provision of PCR kits will be helping Indonesian government to be more prepared with the upgrading his tasting capacities. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, Ambassador Kim. And I think if possible, can we give a big round of applause to Ambassador Kim? Okay. Ambassador Kim, again for the presentation. It is very insightful. I think that a lot of information for us, and covering all of the three topics: ASEAN, and then consultant policy, and also Indonesia. To the Q&A session of question and answer question. There is one thing that I forgot to mention at the beginning of this seminar. There is a brief CV for Ambassador Kim, especially for those of you who are not familiar yet with Ambassador Kim. So Ambassador Kim is a very senior diplomat. He has been in South Korea's foreign service for more than 30 years, since 1981, with various positions inside and also outside South Korea. Ambassador Kim is a graduate from SAIS, from School of Advanced International Studies of Johns Hopkins University, that very famous school. And he has been posted outside of Korea in several places. He has been posted in Pakistan, and then United States, and then as he has mentioned in his presentation, he also has been posted in Brussels, Belgium, as the ambassador of South Korea to European Union, and of course to Indonesia. So I think we are lucky, Indonesia is lucky to have Ambassador Kim to be posted here in Jakarta. All right, Ambassador Kim, if you don't mind, I think there are several questions that will be raised by our audience. I think in the chat box, I have seen there are at least 2 questions from the audience. So with that, I would like to call Miss Dinar Dewi Kania. Are you there? Dinar Dewikanya, please raise
Yeah, I'm here.
please raise your question, and if I may suggest, please make it very short, straight to the point, in as clear as possible language. You can use Bahasa Indonesia, you can use English. Actually, you can use Korean, but I cannot understand Korean, so let's just use Indonesian and English, or English.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jayadi. Good morning, Your Excellency Ambassador Kim. I just want to ask about the foreign policy of South Korea regarding the Muslim ASEAN country such as Indonesia, Malaysia, Brunei Darussalam. Is there any special treatment or any difference the policy between that country that your country decide gitu ya to overcome? Because if I'm not mistaken, I heard in South Korea the Islamophobia is really severe, yeah. But I don't know exactly is it true or not. But I just want to ask about that. Thank you.
Okay. Ambassador Kim, I think you've got the question right. I think it's very straightforward about, is there any specific or particular policies of South Korea toward the Muslim countries related to their Muslimness or something like that? Please, Ambassador Kim. Mas Adi?
Policy measures aiming at specific religious group of countries. I think there's, of course, the Organization of Islamic Countries like OIC. We are deeply involved in OIC process as a partner, even though it's not. Korea, as you know, is a country of tolerance and country of openness. We do not have any discriminatory policies against any group of religious sectors. And you may know that there are some couples who are getting married at mosques in Itaewon in Korea. There's even Indonesian couples are going to get married at mosques in Korea. And we are promoting as a kind of the civic awareness kind of campaign, Muslim friendly and Muslim approachable kind of policies as on the part of the government. And as a true and close friend of Indonesia, we've been always receiving some guidance and support from our Indonesian diplomats, Indonesian politicians, and how to promote religious reconciliation, religious harmony, and interfaith dialogue.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador Kim. Thank you, Ms. Dinar Dewikanya. I myself have visited South Korea, Seoul, and I have visited the mosque and also ate some of the Muslim foods there. I think if you are a Muslim, Indonesian Muslim, and wondering about is it going to be difficult to eat Muslim food in South Korea, I guarantee you it will not be a problem. Just visit South Korea. I think we can continue with the second question from Fadil Muhammad Perdana Kusuma. Are you still there? Fadil, silakan.
Hello. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Jayadi. Hello, yours truly, Mr. Kim. So I want to direct to my question. My question is, what does Republic of Korea see about the opportunities available for cooperation with ASEAN? And I have a second question. What can we do to be able to carry out this collaboration well? Because now we are in hard situation because because COVID-19. So what we can do in the future? Thank you, Mr. Ambassador. Thank you, Mr. Jayadi.
Sorry, Fadil, would you just repeat the first question once again?
Okay, okay.
Sound was not so clear. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Okay. My question is, what does Republic of Korea see about the opportunities available for cooperation with ASEAN? And my last question is, what can we do to be able to carry out this collaboration as well? Yeah, thank you.
So maybe may I understand that the first question is how Korea will be promoting this future partnership with ASEAN?
Yeah, similar.
Yeah, I think that's as was announced by President Moon of South Korea in his New Southern Policy Initiative. I think that ASEAN will be growing in its importance and values vis-a-vis Korea in the coming years, not only to Korea, but also to other major partners and players in the neighborhood of Southeast Asia. I think that's, as we have seen in this global pandemic, disrupting the whole global supply chains. I think that's, I'm witnessing some of the rethinking within the business community leaders on how to make more sustainable, even more safer in securing supply and provision of essential components and parts. I think that's we are now witnessing some of the global companies to have more diversified presence in their global production networks. Some of companies have already decided to move out of China. So even some Korean companies have been quite heavily concentrated on its investment into China. But with that, there's a global disruption in the supply networks that have given another reinforced belief on the need to diversify their production bases, to diversify their supply networks, to diversify their market orientations. So I think that is another aspect of this, the aftershocks of this global pandemic. But I think that's in this whole future evolution, we may see more opportunities to be found with ASEAN partners, including Indonesia.
Okay, thank you, Ambassador Kim.
Sure.
Ambassador Kim, as you know, that this seminar is also being live streamed via YouTube. So now I will turn to 2 questions from YouTube. Then I will return back to Zoom's question after that, because we still have around 4 to 5 possible questions. Number 1, the question from YouTube is from Telly Natalia. I just read the question loud. Any forecast from South Korean experts about Indonesian economy post-COVID-19 pandemic, such as how long will the economy recover after the pandemics?
I don't have any crystal ball. Sorry that I think at this particular juncture, there is no expert who could be very certain and sure about how long this pandemic will last and when this coronavirus contagion will be ending. But I think this we are now seeing some kind of the sharp curves on the part of Indonesia's confirmed cases, gradual sharp curve. In case of Korea, we have made a very sharp curve from the middle of February until the middle of March, and then it has more or less flattened. The curve has been flattened, and now is even descending, it's going down. So I think this it depends upon the test and tracing capability, and also how to make a treatment more available to this infected patients. And also I think this social distancing is another quite crucial part of this whole kind of preventive measures to stem the spread of the coronavirus. I think there's we are still back in Korea. We are still putting into very strict social distancing policies, like Indonesian government is doing is PSBB, and still of course there are some trade-off between the stricter social distancing and the economic kind of damages or the consequences. But I think that's for the time being, we have to be focused on preventing the spread of this contagion from kind of any showing an exponential growth. And as was mentioned by Bapak Doni, the head of BNPB, the Indonesian case will be showing the peak time around the end of May, and hopefully that we could see gradual downslide of this curve in the months of June, and hopefully we could see an end of the tunnel sometime in the early part of July. Of course, that this is all depending upon the voluntary participation of citizens, and also strict determination of citizens to abide by the social distancing policies.
Thank you, Ambassador Kim. The second question from YouTube is from Egi Ningtyas Mulya. The question is rather long, so I think I will just rephrase the question. I hope I can understand it clearly, correctly. As you mentioned that part of the objective of South Korea's new Southern policy is to increase people-to-people relationship, including to increase the visit of the people from South Korea to Indonesia and vice versa. Is there any efforts or programs that from South Korean side to make this visit is easier or more flexible, both between Indonesia and South Korea, and also between ASEAN and South Korea?
Well, thank you so much for the question. I think that that's a very important aspect of our bilateral, our policy toward ASEAN. So a key pillar of New Southern Policy. We have to increase people-to-people exchange. That is something that we have targeted by 2020. We have by the end of this year, we are trying to accomplish 15 million people, the number of the visitors to and from ASEAN. And we are working on the easing of this visa regulations, so that many more people can freely and more easily visit Korea. And we have expanded our categories for multiple visas. So professionals, the government officials and state-owned enterprise officials and academia staff, they are now more or less entitled to apply for multiple visas for 5 years. And also we have established the visa application center within Jakarta, so that try to facilitate the visa issuance for Indonesians. Likewise, in other parts of ASEAN member states, we are more or less doing the same. Of course, we may not be able to this waiver visa, so-called introduce visa-free programs for ASEAN nationals at once, but gradually we'll be improving the facilities for our ASEAN friends to have easier and freer access to Korea.
Thank you. Now we go back to the questions from YouTube, from Zoom's audience. We have about 2 more questions available. If I think it will be good to be this chance to be used. Any question? I don't see any question listed yet from the students. From the lecturers, maybe? Any question? If not, I will just ask my question.
Sure.
I will use this opportunity to take the opportunity to use my right as a moderator to have a question also. Ambassador Kim, from your presentation, we see that there is a kind of imbalance between the data about the achievement, the data about Indonesia, and also the size of Indonesia. You know, considering the size of Indonesia, both in terms of population and also in terms of geography, Indonesia is the largest in ASEAN, right? But as you see, if we look at the relation between Korea and ASEAN, in terms of trading, in terms of tourist visit, and so on and so forth, Indonesia is always behind other countries. Question is new Southern policy that is launched in 2017 in Jakarta, sort of, is part of South Korean effort to increase the level of engagement of Indonesia with South Korea to the level equivalent to Indonesian size. That's number 1. Number 2, what are actually the challenges from South Korean perspective in dealing with Indonesia in general? Or what actually South Korea is expecting from Indonesia to do in order to match the effort that has been being tried by South Korea so far?
Well, that's a very relevant question. I think that is self-explaining in a sense. That's new Southern policy is in general is to expand and broaden our cooperation and outreach toward ASEAN. But as you have seen, some of the data, I think that Vietnam is very much dominant in every aspect of Korea's partnership and interactions with ASEAN as a whole. So Vietnam is the number 1 trading partner within ASEAN. Vietnam is the number 1 investment destination within ASEAN, excelling any of other member states. And number of even the visitors, Indonesia is relatively smaller than other ASEAN countries like Thailand, Philippines, and the number of ASEAN citizens who are living in Korea, Thailand, Vietnam, Philippines are the top 3. Indonesia is only top 4. Why? Of course, this it used to be Indonesia, so that's quite frankly speaking, it's a bit to my regret that Indonesia has been a bit slipping down in this top 3 ranking. Of course, this it has many regions. Of course, the one is that Vietnam has been very fast moving in attracting foreign direct investment, not only from Korea, but also from other countries. But for example, Samsung Electronics alone is occupying the 1/4, 25% of the total export of Vietnam. Samsung Electronics has its very extensive production networks in Vietnam. So Samsung is exporting 1/4 of the whole exports of Vietnam abroad, that this quite a significant portion. And we have about 2,200 Korean companies operating in Indonesia. Unlike Vietnam is more than 5,000. So it's the number is quite kind of self-explanatory. But now I think there's with that new Southern policy, we are trying to put more efforts and more emphasis on diversifying our partner networks, especially with Indonesia, since Indonesia has huge potentials and is developing very fast in the startups and also digital economy transition. So we do view that Indonesia can be much more kind of interlinked and partners, and also can be a good kind of source of mutual shared future for our both economies. And challenges is multifold, but I think there's I could just list up three challenges that we have to tackle. Of course, the first one is that the existing investors who are already in Indonesia should be well taken care of. That's something that, because they are actually the vocal, they could be either speaker for the further and more investments to be channeled into Indonesia, or they could be an anti kind of the investment kind of the advocate. So I think that's to take care of the existing investors is quite important in many aspects. And then second challenge is, of course, the now every country is now competing with each other, and especially this so-called Industry 4.0 or the fourth industrial revolution. More human capital driven economic growth are badly in need, and more investments into human resources development also is critical in upgrading its economic potentials, and also to attract more foreign investment. I think that's why I think it's quite the opportune and timely for the President Jokowi to make a full emphasis on human capital development as the primary agenda for his second term. And the third one is, I think there's we are now living in a very tightly intertwined networks. For example, free trade agreement or a comprehensive economic partnership. Korea is more or less successful in wrapping up its negotiation with Indonesia to conclude this Indonesia-Korea comprehensive economic partnership. And but Vietnam has much faster, for example, and Vietnam has established this FTA with European Union, but Indonesia, due to some thorny issues, Indonesia was not able to conclude this long-standing the economic partnership with the European Union, and then these kind of the systematic kind of framework-based support base for the further development of economic kind of growth. That would be another challenge that we have to tackle with.
Okay, thank you again, Ambassador Kim. As promised, we have two more questions. Quick question, I hope, from the audience in YouTube Zoom application. Question from Mishka Balfas. Please, Mishka.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Jayadi, for the opportunity. Good afternoon, Your Excellencies, Ambassador Kim. My question is basically to know how the contributions of millennials on running the people-centric policy that focus in socio-cultural education. Because as Indonesian millennials that loves like Korean drama and music group, etc., we are like watching a lot, especially in this like pandemic. We're watching a lot of Korean drama and we love them so much. So basically is how the especially South Korea is doing their contributions of millennials on running the people-centric. Thank you.
Please, Mr. Kim.
Thank you, Mishka. It's a quite interesting question. I think there's millennials are at the center of this whole the transformation that every country is now undergoing. I think this Korean government is relatively successful in making use of the so-called K-wave, Hallyu. It's K-pop, K-music, K-drama, K-film, K-food, K-beauty. Even now, under this global fight against COVID-19, we were relatively kind of successful in handling this coronavirus under the so-called K-quarantine or K-bio, because we have fast developed PCR test kits that has helped a lot in early detection of the confirmed cases in a massive scale, and also the self-quarantine and voluntary participation in social distancing have been very effective in stabilizing the trend. And for example, on our part, for the Embassy of Korea based in Indonesia, we have our Korea Cultural Center in Indonesia. And also we have social media supporter groups. So, we have also the KTO, Korea Travel Organization. They are also running its own social media supporter groups. So millennials' voices and millennials' kind of aspirations are being reflected into our policies, implementation toward Indonesia, our approach toward Indonesia. So we are building up so-called Team Korea under the one roof with the support of the government, the embassy, the Korea Cultural Center, Korea Travel Organization, or Korea Contents and Creative Contents Agency. And those are the group that we are all working together. And so in case of the embassy, we are now supporting so-called Sahabat Korea. It's a 100 person led group of social media supporters. And when the new Southern policy was initiated by our government in November 2017, in most of the cases, especially with important countries like Indonesia, we have launched Young Leaders Dialogue. That Young Leaders Dialogue is the forum where young millennials can share their ideas, share their thoughts and visions, and also to try to promote mutual understanding. So that kind of platform-oriented approaches are being now handled by the government.
Thank you. Now we come to the last, but hopefully not least question. This is from St. Henry Putra.
Yes, thank you so much.
Sin or Sultan. Okay, Henry Putra, your time.
Yes. Okay, thank you so much for this opportunity to Mr. Jayadi, and good afternoon, His Excellency Mr. Ambassador. Okay. Farid Zakaria ever interviewed Mr. Lee Hsien Loong, the Prime Minister of Singapore. The statement like this: if he conveyed to Mr. Trump the fear that America is withdrawing from Asia and ceding the field to China, Mr. Lee answered he didn't think the US is withdrawing. America is engaging China very, very actively. It's not a happy engagement right now, but it's not pulling out from the field. The question is how you see the future of relationship between the US and China after pandemic and effect to South Korea and ASEAN. Thank you.
Well, I think this we might need another about 1 semester to discuss this quite very heavy loaded question. I think that's the hegemonic kind of the competition between the United States and China. I think there's even though Jayadi might have to consume his whole semester for teaching, right? I think that but it's quite timely. I think there's even Dr. Henry Kissinger has written an essay that what would be the world after this whole global pandemic is settled down, and whether it's a new post-world order or it's be a complete new order without any big kind of the relevance from the previous so-called before coronavirus world order, or some of the experts are even suggesting that China is very aggressively promoting kind of PR, public relations offensive in this in the wake of this coronavirus battle. But I think that's this coronavirus, of course, is quite impactful to every aspect of our daily lives. Also, it would be very impactful for the interaction of the so-called states. So we are now viewing this more isolationist and so-called nation-state first approaches, and there are countries now kind of building up so-called borders a bit higher, and also try to restrict the freedom of movements, try to restrict the personal privacy and rights. But I think there's the impact would be quite sufficient, but we may not see the whole equation to change, like the competition and off and on collaboration and off and on confrontation between US and China. Of course, this it depends upon what kind of the post-corona policies, especially in the foreign policies, those leaderships, both in Washington, D.C. and Beijing, will take up. We don't know yet, because every country, even including the United States, even China, still struggling to control this ongoing spread of coronavirus. But one thing for sure is that it may not be exactly the same one that we could now we have been seeing in, for example, before the outbreak of coronavirus. And what Koreans are feeling through our own experiences. We have not introduced any lockdown of cities. We have not introduced any complete restriction of movement of people. We, while tackling this coronavirus outbreak, we were fully taking into account the values that we are cherishing: openness, transparency, and democracy. Those are the three values that we were trying to. Of course, it's not 100% complete, but trying to support, trying to embody, and trying to implement. So I think that's, after all, after this whole coronavirus dust are being settled down, we may have chance to sit down together what we have learned, not only in bioscience or the vaccine development or the treatment of patients, but the values. I think that's something that we have to discuss after this whole coronavirus situation is over. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Kim. And with that, I think we will have to wrap up the seminar. And again, I would like to extend our deep gratitude to Ambassador Kim and team for delivering such an insightful presentation. And you have been very patient in answering all of the questions of our audience. Thank you again. To wrap up the session, I would like to invite the head of the Department of International Relations at Paramadina University to say a quick appreciation for about 1 minute. Dr. Tato Sudiarto, floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Pak Jayadi. Selamat siang, Pak Kim. See you again. Thank you to attend the webinar this afternoon. We are very happy to hear the material from your side, the southern policy, the new southern policy of Korea, and we have the insight of how the Korea and Indonesia and especially and also the generally Korea, Republic of Korea and the ASEAN country insight to build up the comprehensive cooperation in the year in the future. This is the our third meeting with the ambassador, and I hope the meeting with the other topics will be introduced in the next semester with the interesting topic and challenging. Okay, thank you, Pak Kim.
Terima kasih.
Thank you, Pak Tato. And Pak Kim, can you bear with me for about 1 more minute?
Sure, yeah.
There is one more to invite. Dr. Siska Prabawaning Tias, the head of our Paramadina Graduate School of Diplomacy. Are you still there, Ibu Siska?
Yes.
Can you say about 1 minute to as an appreciation to Ambassador Kim, please?
Yeah, once again, Ambassador Kim, selamat siang, very much. Thank you very much. It was an honor again for Paramadina Graduate School of Diplomacy. And I personally very inspired by your last conclusions. I think the way the world is going to move toward in the post-pandemic COVID-19, especially when you talk about now the rising of nation state in controlling border, but also in the importance on how the principle of transparency, democracy, and accountability would be leads the world toward. Once again, thank you very much. On behalf of Paramadina Graduate School, I would also like to thank you again. It's an honor, and I'm sorry with the condition is part of the word adaptations, I think, but I think some of the token will be follow-up letters. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ibu Siska. And with that, I would like to end my role as the moderator, and particularly to Ambassador Kim. Again, thank you, and my apology if in moderating this seminar I have been doing several mistakes. I hope that we can continue this meeting in the future, both online and also will be lovely to have a meeting offline again, right? Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. And with that, I would like to hand over the mic to the host of the meeting, Mas Aji. Ambassador Kim, thank you.
Thank you. Stay well and keep safe.
You too.
Yeah, you too.
Kita nggak mau keluar ya?
Ada yang nggak mau keluar. Itu dikeluarin semua itu. Kita mau ngobrol.
Terima kasih semua.
Udah balik ya.
Ayo, mari
Halo, sudah selesai.
Artinya apa? Bagus
Iya,
nggak yang ikut seminar?
Masih betah ini, masih betah.
Bagaimana mahasiswa? Bagus nggak?
Bagus, Pak.
Bagus Pak, bagus. Sering-sering aja Pak.
Iya,
Oh,
Pak.
iya.
Tanya, Pak, enggak, Pak.
Aku kan mau dengarkan, kita dengar bareng-bareng.
So, are we all excused, Mas Haji?
Ya.
Apa Pak Tato ada titah dulu sebelum kita pergi?
Oh, aduh, tidak ada. Makasih. Jadi makasih partisipasinya. Ulangi yang lebih kencang lagi. Mungkin karena ini webinar kelas, maka nggak terlalu banyak. Jangan jadi. Paling full itu tadi 50.
Pesertanya 48 ya? Apa 58?
51 tadi.
51, 52 gitu loh.
Ini nggak ada ini.
Ya.
Di masih ada
Yang
separuh.
mahasiswa yang nggak hadir dikurangi aja nilainya.
Ya, jam
Manakah? Pelan, Pak.
bentar lagi kan dapat apa namanya? Dapat anuan UTS dari si Arya. Bentar lagi dikurangi.
Nanti saya yang dikejar.
Dikurangi 20 poin.
Ini
Halo, Pak. Halo Pak, itu online loh Pak.
Ya?
Iya.
Halo, ini masih online YouTube nih.
Ini masih online.
Mas,
Masih online juga itu Pak, embassy Pak.
Masih online.
Streaming enggak.